Morristown College, back in slave days, it was basically illegal to teach a slave to read and write. Some slave owners up here on Morningside Street, they had a slave girl up there, and then freedom came, and she decided to move back in the house where her former owners were, and they treat her like their own child and taught her to read and write. But the big deal was some slaves would have to slip and become literate. They'd have to slip and learn to read and write. But two missionary ladies from, I think, New Jersey, after the Civil War, during the Civil War we had 500 people here. After the Civil War, Morristown started growing. They had a big growth, and since Confederate money was no good, anybody with green money, from the Union could come here and buy property and everything. We had a gigantic growth come to this area after the Civil War, with people coming in with money, newspapers. Well, we had newspapers prior to the war, but some ladies from New Jersey, they thought these poor black children down here have a right to, they're going to have an education to prosper. And so they come down here and they started a school that would grow into Morristown College. His name, Mr. Fulton, was the first, he was a student there. The old story that I've heard told was that he built a shack up there to stay in when he went to what became Morristown College. And, would even sometimes have to pick greens just to have food. And he became the first teacher there. I'm doing this because I didn't have time to review. And then Morristown College created this area was a mecca for educated black folks. When I started Morristown College, to keep going, they put the high school within the college, Morristown College High School. So now the kids had an opportunity to go, unlike my daddy, who went to third grade. People didn't think about going, even in my early days, 7th or 8th grade, get a job, get a car. But they had an opportunity to go through high school and then college, Morristown College. So here's a little tiny town in the middle of East Tennessee that's got a college for black kids. But the real big deal about that college, as a young kid growing up here, you would see, we'd get to go to the movies because nobody had air conditioning at the time. We get to go to the movies because it's air conditioned this part of the year. And then here would come the Morristown College kids. And they'd walk down Main Street all dressed up. Ties, everything. Going to the movies is a big deal. Now, it has to sit in a different place, but everything, and you just look at yourself and then look at them dressed up. And us poor white kids, we couldn't even dream. I never dreamed of finishing college. But then Morristown College started letting a few of the white kids come there. Bill Henderson, Jimmy McGill, they let them come there because we could afford to go to college. So not only did it develop a highly educated group of black folks within this area, it also gave some opportunities for some poor white folks. That's not ever mentioned too much, but it did happen. I've done stories. I mentioned, 80-year segments. Just this country's only been here for 4 80-year lifetimes. And I've had the opportunity, the blessing to be able to talk to people that were the sons and daughters of Civil War soldiers. I got to see a living Spanish-American war soldier. Got to talk to World War I soldiers, 1917, 1918. And I mentioned earlier the children and wives of a Civil War soldier. Gertie Janeway was the last Civil War wife around here. Sons and daughters of slaves. And they had a particular story to tell. I don't want to mention any names, but one group, a man and his wife, they'd been married a long time, had started out back in the 1920s and 30s. I started my job in the 80s, so there were still a lot of people around that had lived in the last century. And they told that in the early days, the only doctor they could get was at a bridge in Claiborne County. He would come there at night and treat them. I thought that's animalistic, doing people that way. And now, you know, it's gone to where my doctor's a black fellow and one of the most brilliant people I know. That's the talent that we left behind. That's the talent that we didn't utilize. And then another one lived on Center Street near where Dr. Alpha lives. He was the son of a slave, and he would laugh and joke. He was a friendly fella. And I'll never forget, he taught me something. He said, Jimmy, he said, I got something you need to try. He would tell about it. And he sent a young boy into the refrigerator, and he come out with a aluminum wrapped pawpaw. You know, I'd heard of pawpaws and stuff. He had a pawpaw tree growing, and he'd tell about eating pawpaws. They're like a banana, about shaped like a sweet potato. They got a good flavor. It's like a secret delicacy around here. And he was telling about eating pawpaws. You know, they had a way to get sweetness back in the early days when they couldn't afford to go to the store and buy a simple candy bar, you know. So he was telling about that. Yeah, we get them pawpaws. I'd still love them pawpaws. And another one, not a lot of slaves in this area. I mean, there were, but not like some other areas. One big place was a community called Swansylvania. There's a Swan place over there. He had like he was a wealthy fella. He had a bunch of slaves. And he said, yeah, my mama was a slave for Mr. Swan. And she was in charge of the kitchen. And Mr. Swan's boy would come in the kitchen where my mama was in charge. It was her kitchen. And Mama'd have a pie sitting out on the table. And the Swan boy would get him a knife and go over to cut that pie. Mama would pick up a skillet and go after him and say, this is your farm. He said, but this is my kitchen. That's what she'd tell him. Stories like little indicators from the bottom up telling what life was like, you know. Daniel Boone had a slave, but the slave's duty was to go hunting with him. And the slave actually saved his life. He stepped on a sharp stick, couldn't walk. The slave went and got him help. A lot of them were so proud, like in Jefferson County. There's a really educated family there that had slaves that taught them, and then the descendants of those slaves became the top black educators in Jefferson County. When I started teaching, it was after integration, you know, I told you that they started Morristown College High School, and the demand for integration was so strong that some of the older school people decided, well, we got to stop this any way we can. So we built a new high school, West High School. You know that. West High School. And West High School had a swimming pool, and it was air conditioned. They thought we're going to throw it at them so that way we don't have to worry about this integration stuff, because it probably started a war. But you know, we go by there and that swimming pool and everything. And Morristown College, they'd play when the high school, Morristown High School and Morristown College, will use the same football field. The Green Dragons, was that what they were?
The Red Dragons, I think.
Oh, wait, Red Knights.
Red Knights.
Yeah, the Red Knights. Mm-hmm. They'd come over there, and it was fun to go watch those high school football games, you know, when the high school was there. And later, got to be Green Dragons when they put the new high school in. But it was fun watching them because, you know, a white football team is tough and strong and everything, but they're methodical. And them boys from over at the Morristown High School, they were athletes. They took risk. You know, they were bold. You know, they run. They just do stuff. So when you combine methodical with athleticism and abilities, you get a stronger football team. And you've seen that because right after integration, we won our first statewide title, you know, with the combined bunch. Then we got the black teachers, come in, and those teachers, let me tell you, you know, as an educator, I couldn't have survived in the early days of education because of my dialect, you know, and my style. Those people were strictly about academics. I mean, those black educators, Mr. Easley and all of those people, they were solid academics. So we found out, it took a little while, but we found out that if we work as a team, we're stronger than as an individual. Coming up here, you know, back then families followed a particular trade. The Coleman family were noted masons around here. When I got out of the Army, I took a job at night at a store called Sky City. And all the people in this town would come through there. And I never forget a Coleman fella that was a mason. Now, you know, masonry, I've been to 6 or 7 colleges. My neighbor makes $20,000 more than I ever made driving a truck. And, you know, finding a good trade right now, you know, you can do better than you can with a lot of different degrees. And I never forget Mr. Coleman coming in there. They had the masonry. There was a white family that had a masonry group, and we were building this town as fast as possible. I remember about 13,000 when I moved here to 50,000 now, you know, so everybody knew each other. And the Colemans had the name for masonry. Chester Job was a mechanic. Chester Job had the name for the best mechanic in the town. He worked side by side with a white fella named Calvin Sipe. Calvin Sipe was a good body man. He fixed the dents, and Chester would fix the engine. So they worked together, and it was successful for them. Easterlies, you just figure they were education folks. Well, you seen Janie Mae, she was a Coleman. Well, it caught me off guard, but I just wish I could just keep going down the list of names, but I got to know everybody. I'll tell you a thing that really impacted me. You know, I have a dear friend, and I mean dear friend, it's not just friend. He's 80 years old, and you're pretty healthy fella. This 80-year-old man can put you on the ground hitting you 1 inch away. He's a 10th degree black belt, the highest you can go in karate. Am I right?
Yeah.
He's something else. When he came back from the Army, I was just a young kid. I've got a photo of it. Didn't start growing until I was like 17 or 18. I had big black Buddy Holly glasses like you got, and skinny. And he came back, and these were the days in the transition, you know, just getting to know everybody. He came back, and it was brand new in that time, the sport of karate. And he taught a karate class at the Tally Ward Recreation Center, and had 3 or 4 black guys, and he got some of us white guys, white kids, in there and didn't charge us a nickel. He got us in there and trained us. That allowed me to get on the team here at Walter State and later the team at UT. And then as a youngster growing up, you remember your first car, how difficult it was to acquire it, how expensive it was to put gas in. I got my first car. I always, if the Lord made women, anything better than women, he kept it. And I always want me a girlfriend, but you know, they sort of go around the nerds. But important to keep that car running. And the transmission messed up. And the transmission to fix it would cost as much as the car cost. It's an old junker. And since Pete Cloud was a friend of my daddy, you know, my daddy, big Texas man, he didn't say nothing. He'd give me 3 points of advice. He said, Jimmy, first thing, look at a man's fingers. If they're big around, don't mess with him. If a man talks a lot, don't worry about him. The man to worry about is one that don't talk a lot. And he said the man to be scared of is the man that just has one gun, because he knows how to use that gun. He gave me that kind of advice. And him and Pete Cloud got along real good. I mean, we had a neighbor that cussed a lot. And my daddy just went over and whispered to him. He'd get out cussing in the street, all the little kids hear him. And Daddy went over and whispered to him. I never heard that man say another cuss word. Because, you know, you can tell who not to mess with. And Pete, I had that car with the transmission problem, and it was going to cost me, from what accounts I'd gotten, about what I'd pay for the car. And I thought, well, I just, you know, I ain't going to put Pete in no twist or nothing. I'll see if he can tell me about the car. So I took it over at Pete Cloud's garage. He built that by his own hands, put the concrete blocks up. He'll be in the newspaper 2 Sundays. But Pete got under the car for 5 minutes and come back out, and he says, ready to go. I said, well, that's pretty quick. And he said, well, I've done this a while, you know. And I tried to pay him, he wouldn't take it. Now you think, here I am, nearly 77, a 60-year-old memory, you think that goes away? Somebody doing you like that? You can never repay him. He said, you ain't gonna pay me. He told me that because I can't repay him for doing me that way. I've, in 36 years, I've done about 1,200 interviews. An old fella that was my mentor, he remembered the 1900 starting. He remembered the 1900 starting. Morristown had mud streets, and they had flat stones sitting across the street, spaced so that wagon wheels could go between them, and so that the people that were walking could step on that stone, those stones, to keep from getting mud on their shoes. And I said, Mr. Noah, you remember the 1900s start? And he said, yeah. And he told me about that story about the stones. And he said, I tell you something else I'll never forget. He said, I was standing in that building, you know, where the milk store was, right next to it, about that time. And I had my short pants on. I was standing at the back of a store. And my buddy came back and he said, Hal, you need to come up front and take a look. And right up Main Street, we're going psh, 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 psh. It was a Stanley steamer. It's the first automobile I'd ever seen. And I said, okay, Mr. Noe, you remember the 1900s, you remember the 1800s, you remember 1900s start, you've seen the first airplanes come, seen all of that stuff, the Depression, the Roaring Twenties, the wars. What was the whole favorite time of all the times you lived? He said, Jimmy, right now is my favorite time. He said, if you get hungry for anything, you can get it. If you get a desire to eat something, you can get it now. And if you're hurting, he was in his high 80s, they can keep you from hurting. He said, but let me tell you something, son. He said, we learned a lot since I've been alive, but we have forgotten everything we learned in the last 2,000 years. And that's a story 40 years old, and I can still remember the words. Like Miss Nina, you know, how related is she to Janie?
That was her aunt.
Okay, yeah.
My aunt.
Yeah, yours. You know, I told you we had a incredibly well-educated black population because, you know, the access to the school, and it paid off so well in the people. And we still have that. And primarily because of the opportunities that came with that school and schools like it. But having grown up here, and down on Center Street, they built Cherokee Lake out here to get electricity so we could fight World War II, get electricity, make aluminum and stuff. And we had, after slavery, we had a bunch of neighborhoods pop up that were just solely, former slaves. Golder out on the Holston River, Irwinville up here around Whitesburg, Rocktown, Mason Place out there near Lowland, a lot of just black communities. They had everything. I mean, they had the preacher, they had the person performed as a doctor, store, everything. And with the coming of Cherokee Lake, they took up a lot of the best property in this area and flooded it to make the lake. And they paid the black folk, they moved here, moved into like Cherokee Drive, Center Street out there. Center Street was part black, part white, neighbor, black, white. And you asked Janie Mae this, if you was a white kid messing around some black person's yard, that woman's gonna come out and spank you. If you was a black kid messing in some white person's car, they're gonna come out there and spank you. You don't look and say, well, you white, you can't spank me, you black, you can't. Yeah, they can. But then they get him, Goose Holler Center Street was known, them boys fight. In the old days, you worked out problems real quick. Today they pull out a gun and shoot you. But back then, boys get in fights. You've been around long enough to see that. And the next day, they're best friends. I've heard them say he had a fist big as a cantaloupe, and he hit me, and I couldn't taste nothing for a whole day. But they fight, and the next day they're back friends, But Nina, there's a difference between a chef and a cook. A chef can fix something good looking, and a cook can fix something that tastes good and fills you up. Now Nina Smith, she was a brilliant woman, professional, everything, but she's an awesome cook. I'll just tell you that. I remember one time, growing up poor, we grew up on pinto beans and cornbread and fried potatoes. And Mama reversed it every day. She'd have fried potatoes, then pinto beans. But I got starved for them when I got away in the military. I got starved for them. And Nina, I got invited over to their place to do a story on pinto beans, because people don't know that. They got that protein in them, and you don't get hungry for 3 or 4 hours. Now, you familiar with that? And she could cook them as well. The only person I ever seen could cook them as well as my mama. So just because they have one talent, you check them out, get to know them a little bit better, and you find out they got more than one talent. And that's my memory, Miss Smith. I said, I'm at home here. I can sit there and try not to make a fool out of myself eating so fast.
What was the other gentleman you named?
Well, what about Wallace?
I was about to ask you, maybe talk about Wallace Coleman.
Yeah, one of my favorite stories. This fella, I'm going to tell you this. This fella is one of the top blues people in the United States right now. He's in his upper 80s and still performing weekly, and he can put on a show, a 2-hour show, at the top of his energy. He started out here in Morristown, and now keep in mind, at this time, Morristown may have had 10,000 people, and that includes the whole area, not just downtown. And he grew up in downtown Morristown. And as a young boy now, he's still going, still making music. He's pushing 90, but he ain't slowed down none. Well, not much. But when he was a young boy, he finally got a hold of 50 cents. 50 cents back then was a bunch of money. and he turned around and invested that 50 cents in a harmonica. Am I telling this right? And he would walk up and down Main Street, and the train would come by, that old steam engine, and blow the whistle coming in here. And that whistle lasts a long time. And Wallace would practice holding a note on that whistle as long as the whistle blew. That developed his lung capacity. In those days, my mother's family, her people rented farms. You had to, if you moved on a farm, the owner got half of what you grew. And sometimes, the crop would be bad and they'd have to go somewhere like Iowa or somewhere and pick crops. And they did old-fashioned harp note singing, but music comes from this area. You can look around and see I worked for Dolly Parton, watched her grow up, and you tell me she ain't good at what she does. But Wallace would sit and listen to the old radios. They had a big old Burgess battery on them, a battery-powered radio, and listen to the station that played blues music, and he got involved with it. To get a good job, back then when I was coming up, you had a choice of going to a furniture factory for $1 an hour, upholstering chair arms, going to a grocery store, that's it. He went up north to Ohio, Cleveland, and got a good job up there. He retired from it. And while he was up there, he'd go to all these blues clubs, and he actually met the great blues masters. Got to meet them. And finally, one of them that never used a harmonica player decided to use him, because when he'd get on breaks at work, he'd play that thing. And they heard him play it, so they took him on. And now he's outlived them all, and he's the king of the blues around here. Now, if you ever get a chance to listen to Wallace Coleman do the blues, you'll go back the next time you get a chance and just understand that he started out as a poor kid walking on Main Street around here with a little simple harmonica and developed it into a culture through work. Well, having grown up here, I can't remember a time when they might have went to different churches. Churches even today fairly segregated, but schools were. But now I'm being as honest as I possibly can, because this little thing here's going to outlast me. I can't remember when we didn't get along. Now that's saying a lot. Now, everywhere you go, you're going to see somebody that's, the opposite. But for the most I ever heard, my mother, you better not say nothing about black folks. She said, them poor black folks work harder than you ever worked. That's what she'd say. So, and I'm sure it's from your side too. There's some good white folks, I hope. There's just, when I'm at Dollywood and I see 28 years, then they're getting 3 million. I guess I've seen 10 million people. Never seen any two alike. So regardless of your color, you're going to see good ones and bad ones. All you have to do is pick out the good ones. And there's plenty of them. So you ain't never going to be out of having a friend. Now, don't you remember Frank Litz? Now, your people come from there?
Well, see, my mother was the baby of Janie's mother.
Okay.
So we're first cousins, Wallace Coleman and Janie and I.
I told you about working $3 an hour on field.
Yeah.
Frank Litz owned it. He had that big old white house out there next to, Frank Litz owned a farm, had that big old white house out there next to Country Club, yeah.
Yeah.
He would go, he was the friendliest man in the world. He taught me a lesson. Where Home Depot is today, I was back there plowing his tobacco with a mule. Mm-hmm. And he said, Jimmy, it's time to shut down. He said, take the harness off that mule and hitch it, put it on its, take the trace chains off of it, put it on the harness up there, take that mule back to the barn. And I did, and I got on the mule to ride it back. He said, what are you doing on that mule? I said, I'm gonna ride it back here to the barn. He said, get off that mule. It's done more work than you have. He would go get a hog killed and go through town and give it away. And he'd come through that. He'd tell me about those folks lived out there. You know, I remember when they were getting rid of, people quit riding to town on wagons. You know, mules and stuff come down on Saturdays. You couldn't even walk up Main Street. And this old black man, and he'd come by the house in his mules, and we lived on a hill. He'd stop them mules, that wagon, going down the hill. He had car tires on the brake. He pulled the brake and tell the mules, wait right there, I'll be right back. And them mules got that going down the hill with that wagon pushing them, and they sat there, didn't move an ounce. That's the last man I seen that would drive a wagon around here. Richard T. Williams had he had a tall, beautiful wife. He's a little old runny fella, you know. And he had 3 beautiful daughters and a son named Scotty. And Richard is a good friend of mine. And he's almost 90 now. He lives up here. He had a tall, beautiful wife, looked like a queen. I mean, she was tall, she was that much taller than him. And they come in the store and here's this beautiful thing, that little old wormy fella, you know. And their daughters was gorgeous. And then so they integrated University of Tennessee. Honey, I'm gonna tell you what, I told you, if the Lord made anything better than women, he kept it. But he had some good looking girls, and the first, his daughter went down there and made homecoming queen the first year. Then the biggest factory in this town is right up here that makes pistons. Anyway, the Germans own it. The German guy that was over that factory, they're the biggest employer in this county. He'll come to me, it's one of them little old, ain't hooked up yet. He, German guy, young German guy, cool, you know, big athlete, drives them Mercedes cars. He got a look at Richard's daughter. Honey, it fired him up. She was graduated UT, Miss Homecoming, all that. Went up to New York City, got to be a fashion person up there. And she was home, and Roland Zitt, the German, took one girl, look at that girl. And they talked a couple of times, and she said, I gotta go back to New York City. You know what that guy done? He got in his Trans Am car and burnt the roads up between here and New York City. Am I telling him the truth?
That's the truth.
Yeah, burnt. Now you might want to do this, Mario. I mean, honey, sometimes they keep her in the heat. Anyway, she's beautiful still, sang like an angel. He went up there to her apartment in New York City. He said, get your stuff, you're going home with me. And they married. They've been married 40 years.
And she is one of the original members of the Morristown Task Force on
Yeah,
Diversity.
yeah. See, Kenneth is it.
That's right.
Well, here's the thing. I was giving a speech in Nashville, and this fella come up. I hush, you got break to take, Mario, but I can't quit yet. You give me coffee. I was giving a speech there in Nashville, and this guy come up and he said, I've got a question for you. He said, I wonder where you learned that dialect. I learned to speak that particular dialect. I said, mister, I was born talking this dialect. He said, well, I'm a director, I'm a movie director in California. And I thought, yeah, you know, everybody always telling you how important they are. I said, yeah, and a 10-pound hummingbird's skinny too. You ain't no movie director. Well, anyhow, I got home and I got a phone call. And he said, this is David Zucker. I met you at Nashville. We're making a film out here in Hollywood, and we need somebody, a consultant on the Appalachian dialect. Would you consider coming out here? And I got smelling money, you know what you're gonna say. And I got Richard, you know, little old black dude, skinny and everything. Boy, he had a mouth on it. He could talk the sand out of cement. But I said, you going with me, Richard? He said, yeah, I'll go with you. You know, he's always down talking. And he worked at Dollywood after he retired from federal government. Mm-hmm. He became a master blacksmith out there. You know, he blacksmiths at Mountain Makings. Mm-hmm. It's like getting a black belt in karate. He became a master blacksmith out at Dollywood. Now, I've worked there 28 years. I still do. And when she come by, when Dolly Parton come by, she ain't worth but $550 million and gives a lot of it away. In a little golf cart, Richard was one of them, the few people she stopped and just talked to. She pulled her golf cart up. Here's Dolly Parton, honey, now. I don't care what color you are. If you don't think Dolly Parton ain't pretty, something wrong with you. But he pulled up to her. She pulled up to him. He'd be sitting there still beating. He didn't even quit beating on iron. And he said, "Hi, Richard. Well, what do you want to talk to old man like me for? You just keep a beating." And she said, "Well, I just want to figure how you doing, how they treating you and everything." And he said, "Oh, they treat me okay," and just keep beating. And they sit there. She just loved talking to him. And after a while, she said, "I got to go." And he said, "Well, here, you probably don't want this," and hand it to her. And he had been making her a keychain with a leaf on it that she still carries. Anyway, I know his gift to gab, and we're made 30 films of that. You ever see the Heartland series, Bill Landry, with him? So I call Landry because he know how to talk movies with him. So we got out there, and here we were, 3 Appalachians mixed in. This guy, what David Zucker did was Naked Gun, Airplane, all that stuff, have breakfast, Steven Spielberg and everything. And he'd had a big party out there. And, I felt like, a frog in a bucket out there with that bunch. But me and them other 2 was standing over next to a window. "What are we doing here?" And one of them come over there with his wine glass, and he said, "I've made 15 films now, and I've got an Emmy. Is there any film industry in Tennessee?" And Landry, you know how he is, he's down home. He said, "Well, I made 1,500 of them films, and I got a few of them awards." And that fellow just turned around and walked off. And they'd had a party, and they got Hollywood wannabes, girls and boys. Them boys got teeth look like a piano keyboard, and them girls, cut all their shirts down real low, and they out there just posing. So somebody, "What?" So somebody get them in a movie, and little old skinny old Richard be sitting out there, and them babes come up around him. And I've got a picture of him. He's surrounded by 8 or 10 of them, And I said, "Richard, you gonna get out here and them women get you in trouble?" He said, "You always messing up things for me."